In Washington, the news cycle never quits. There are federal spending cuts, potential department shutdowns, and layoffs across the board. We know it's a lot, but we're here to fill you in on some economic stories out of D.C. you might have missed this week. I'm Nancy Marshall-Genzer, a Washington correspondent at Marketplace. To kick us off, getting your Social Security benefits might start to feel a whole lot more like a trip to the DMV. Starting this month, new applicants and people changing their direct deposit information will no longer be allowed to verify their identity over the phone. They'll have to use what the agency calls Internet ID proofing. If applicants don't have access to the internet, they'll have to make in-person appointments at Social Security field offices. The tighter measures are intended to limit fraud. The plan comes as the agency prepares to shut down dozens of Social Security offices throughout the country and lay off thousands of workers. Moving to new developments in DEI, segregated facilities are no longer explicitly banned for government contractors. This was first reported by NPR. A memo from the Trump administration says the federal government won't enforce an executive order from the 1960s that prohibits contractors from having segregated establishments, including drinking fountains, waiting rooms, and restaurants. The memo addresses a clause in the federal acquisition regulation, which sets standards for federal contractors. Staff who oversee contractors at some federal agencies have been told to start enforcing this, and that includes the Departments of Defense, Commerce, and Homeland Security. To be clear, federal contractors are still covered by state and federal laws, like the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which makes segregated facilities illegal. While the removal of the segregation ban is symbolic, some critics say it's a sign of just how far the Trump administration will go to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in the federal government and private sector. And food banks say the Agriculture Department is canceling millions of dollars worth of food deliveries. This is according to a report in Politico. Last fall, the USDA set aside $500 million for deliveries to food banks this year under an emergency food assistance program. Officials at food banks told Politico the cuts will make it hard for them to meet their clients' needs, especially since food prices are 20% higher than they were before the pandemic. The Agriculture Department is also cutting two other federal food programs. It's ending more than $1 billion in planned federal spending for schools and food banks to buy food directly from local farmers. And Congress may also reduce the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. 40 million low-income Americans rely on that program for food. That's what you might have missed in Washington this week. For more stories like this, go to marketplace.org.